A stone circle frames a perfect sunrise on the longest day of the year. This was not an accident, but an ancient and deliberate clock. Long before the first written calendars, civilizations across the world solved the mystery of time by turning their landscapes into monumental observatories. By the end of this exploration, you will understand the hidden language of mountains and stones that guided entire societies. How did cultures separated by oceans develop such similar ideas? What profound knowledge disappears when we only see ruins instead of celestial instruments? What does our own relationship with time lose when we forget to look at the horizon? The need to measure time is as old as human consciousness itself. For our earliest ancestors, time was not a number on a clock but a rhythm felt in the bones, a cycle witnessed in the world around them. The sun's daily journey from horizon to horizon marked the passage of a day. The moon's phases from a slender crescent to a full silver disk and back again carved the month, and the sun's shifting path along the horizon, moving north and south with the seasons, defined the entire year. These were not abstract concepts but the fundamental pulse of existence, dictating when to plant seeds, when to harvest, when to move with migrating herds, and when to gather for sacred ceremonies. To lose track of these cycles meant risking hunger, hardship, or missing a vital communal moment. This primal connection to the sky is what experts call a cosmovision, a worldview where the heavens and the earth are not separate realms but parts of a single, living system. Every sunrise, every moonrise was a conversation between the community and the cosmos. But how do you make that conversation permanent? How do you ensure that everyone, for generations, witnesses the same celestial event in exactly the same way? You cannot rely on memory alone or on a single person pointing to the sky. The solution was to bring the sky down to earth. They began to build relationships not just with the stars, but with the very land beneath their feet, selecting a distant mountain peak, a solitary rock, or a gap between two hills as a fixed, unmoving partner in this celestial dance. These landscape markers became the stationary hands on a giant, natural clock face, turning the abstract patterns of the sky into a tangible, shared experience that could guide a civilization season after season, century after century. The most direct and powerful way to mark the sun's journey was to capture its light at its most extreme positions. This practice, known as solar alignment, transformed architecture into a precise astronomical instrument. Builders would orient a temple doorway, a narrow window, or a single standing stone so that on one specific day of the year, the rising or setting sun would pour its light directly through that opening, illuminating a sacred altar or striking a carved marker. This was not a vague approximation, but an act of stunning precision that required generations of observation. The goal was to identify the solstices, the 2 days each year when the sun reaches its farthest northern and southern points on the horizon, and the equinoxes, the 2 days of perfect balance when day and night are of equal length. These 4 solar events became the fundamental pillars of the ancient calendar, dividing the year into its essential seasons. One of the most famous examples is the Intihuatana stone at Machu Picchu, high in the Peruvian Andes. Its name is often translated as the hitching post of the sun. The Inca believed that on the solstices, the sun needed to be symbolically tied to this carved granite pillar to prevent it from continuing its journey away from the earth, which would plunge the world into eternal darkness. During these critical moments, priests would perform ceremonies as the sun's shadow vanished or aligned perfectly with the stone's geometry. It was an act of cosmic stewardship, a ritual that reaffirmed the sacred pact between the empire and the celestial powers that governed life, growth, and order. The engineering behind these alignments reveals a profound, long-term vision. Planning and constructing a monument that would accurately frame a sunrise 200 years in the future required more than just technical skill. It demanded a cultural commitment to a project that the builders themselves would never see completed. It meant embedding astronomical knowledge so deeply into stone that it became a permanent, unspoken teacher for all future generations. When the dawn light finally pierced that long corridor on the winter solstice, it was a communal event. It signaled to the entire society that a new agricultural cycle was beginning, that a major festival must commence, or that a leader's authority was renewed by the cosmos itself. In this way, solar alignments did more than just tell time. They wove cosmic order directly into the very fabric of daily life, making the passage of seasons a visible, shared, and sacred experience. But the sun was only half the story. The moon presented a far more complex and mysterious puzzle. While the sun follows a predictable annual path, the moon dances to a much longer and more intricate rhythm. Its rising and setting points on the horizon do not simply repeat each month. They slowly swing back and forth between extreme northern and southern limits over a grand cycle lasting 18.6 years. At the peak of this cycle, an event known as a major lunar standstill occurs where the full moon appears to pause at its farthest possible point, rising and setting in the same spot for several nights in a row. Tracking this subtle, multi-generational pattern required a different kind of patience and vision. It demanded that a society not only observe the sky, but faithfully record and pass down that knowledge for nearly 2 decades before the pattern fully revealed itself. This was astronomy on the scale of a human lifetime, a project that connected grandparents with their grandchildren through a shared celestial goal. One compelling example is found high atop Chimney Rock in Colorado, where the ancestral Puebloans built a structure known as the Great House. Its location is dramatic and seemingly impractical, perched on a high mesa between 2 towering rock pinnacles. Researchers have proposed that this precise placement was deliberate, designed so that every 18.6 years, the rising full moon of the major standstill would appear to nestle perfectly between those stone spires. Think about the commitment that represents. An elder who witnessed the alignment as a young adult would be middle-aged by the time it happened again, and likely gone by the 3rd occurrence. Marking this cycle was an act of profound faith in the future, a testament to a culture's dedication to understanding the deepest, slowest rhythms of the cosmos. These lunar standstill markers likely held immense ceremonial and social importance. They were not about dictating the planting season, but perhaps about marking much longer cycles of leadership, community renewal, or prophetic mythology. They connected the living community to a timeline that stretched far beyond individual memory, embedding a sense of continuity and cosmic order into the very identity of the people. When that distant moon finally slid into its appointed slot between the stones, it was a validation of generations of watchful waiting, a celestial confirmation that the community was still in harmony with the grand, slow heartbeat of the universe. The third monumental method required no construction at all, only observation. Known as horizon calendars, this approach transformed the entire surrounding landscape into a giant, passive timepiece. Instead of building an archway to frame the sun, ancient skywatchers would identify a natural feature on the distant horizon, like a distinctive mountain peak, a deep notch between 2 hills, or a solitary rock spire. They would then memorize which celestial body rose or set behind that specific landmark on a critical day of the year. The calendar was not carved in stone, but painted across the skyline, its accuracy guaranteed by the immutable shape of the Earth itself. This created a deeply intimate relationship between a community and its home, where every sunrise was not just a daily event, but a moving marker along a familiar, mountainous horizon. The most stunning example of this principle refined into high art is found at Fajoda Butte in Chaco Canyon. Here, the ancestral Puebloans did not just watch the horizon, they harnessed a sliver of it. They positioned two massive fallen sandstone slabs so that narrow shafts of sunlight could pass between them. On the summer solstice, a brilliant dagger of light pierces the center of a spiral petroglyph carved on the rock wall behind them. On the winter solstice, two daggers of light perfectly bracket the same spiral, and on the equinoxes, a single shaft of light cuts directly through its center. This sun dagger is a masterpiece of celestial engineering, a dynamic sculpture of light and shadow that activates only on the most important days of the solar year. It represents a brilliant synergy where human artistry did not fight the natural environment but collaborated with it. The builders used the existing rockfall, understood the precise angle of the sun, and chose a canvas, the spiral, that may have symbolized the cosmic cycle itself. This method produced hyper-local calendars, uniquely tailored to a specific valley or mesa. Your village calendar would be different from the next village over because your horizon was different. This made timekeeping a personal, communal knowledge, a secret written in the silhouette of home. It blended the measurement of time with sacred geography so completely that they became one and the same, an elegant system where to know the date was to look upon a beloved and familiar landscape with knowing eyes. Across the Atlantic, on the wind-swept plains of ancient Europe, another civilization was solving the same cosmic puzzles with a different kind of raw material. In Neolithic Britain and Brittany, communities became master builders of earth and stone, creating monuments so large and so precisely placed that they still dominate the landscape today. These are not mere piles of rock, they are colossal astronomical machines. The most famous of them all, Stonehenge, stands as a testament to this ambition. Its iconic sarsen stones, some weighing over 25 tons, were dragged from quarries nearly 20 miles away, an almost unimaginable feat of logistics and communal will. But the purpose was not simply to create a grand circle, it was to frame celestial events. The central axis of Stonehenge aligns with the summer solstice sunrise, welcoming the sun at its peak power. Yet, many of its other alignments also point to the extreme rising and setting points of the moon during its major standstill cycle. This suggests the builders were attempting to create a grand unified calendar, one that could track both the sun's reliable yearly rhythm and the moon's more complex 18.6-year dance. To understand the sophistication of their intent, we must look beyond Stonehenge to places like Newgrange in Ireland. This massive circular mound, older than the pyramids of Egypt, is often called a passage tomb, but that label barely scratches the surface of its genius. Above its entrance is a small, rectangular opening known as a roof box. For most of the year, the inner chamber lies in total darkness, but for a few precious minutes around dawn on the winter solstice, a narrow beam of sunlight pierces through this roof box, travels down a long, narrow passageway, and slowly illuminates the central chamber in a golden light. This event lasts for roughly 17 minutes. It is not an accident of architecture, it is a meticulously engineered moment of celestial theater, designed to happen on the shortest, darkest day of the year. The symbolic power is profound, a promise of the sun's return and the rebirth of the land, delivered directly by the cosmos into the heart of a structure built for ancestors. It transforms a memorial site into a living clock, connecting the world of the living, the memory of those who passed, and the cyclical promise of renewal in a single, brilliant shaft of light. The sheer effort involved speaks volumes about the central importance of these events. Transporting 80-ton stones for Stonehenge, or precisely aligning a 62-foot passage at Newgrange to a solstice sunrise, required generations of coordinated labor. This was not a hobby for a priestly class, it was a core societal project. The calendar these monuments helped track governed everything: the agricultural cycle, the timing of gatherings and trade, the schedule of sacred ceremonies. By embedding this calendar into the immutable landscape, they made it a permanent communal possession. the knowledge was no longer held in fragile human memory. It was set in stone for all to see and experience. Every solstice sunrise that lit up a chamber or passed between two megaliths was a communal reaffirmation that the world was still in order, that the rituals were correct, and that the community remained in sync with the fundamental laws of the universe. These builders were not just astronomers or engineers. They were the architects of time itself, constructing a physical bridge between the human scale and the cosmic scale, a legacy in stone that continues to whisper its secrets across 5,000 years. This deep connection between sky, stone, and survival reached its most elegant expression in the arid landscapes of the American Southwest. Here, the ancestral Puebloans, sometimes called the Anasazi, became master astronomers of the desert. With a horizon defined by stark mesas and deep canyons, they developed a system of timekeeping so integrated with their architecture that their buildings themselves became calendars. Beyond the famous sun dagger of Fajada Butte, their settlements are filled with subtle, intentional alignments. At places like Hovenweep Castle, a complex of towers perched on a canyon rim, you find carefully crafted windows and doorways. These are not random openings. Specific ports were designed so that on the morning of the summer solstice, a beam of sunlight would pierce the darkness and strike a particular corner of the interior wall. On the winter solstice, the light would fall somewhere else entirely. This was a built-in annual notification system, a silent alarm clock set by the cosmos. They refined this idea further with structures known as sun-watching stations. These were often simple in design, a south-facing wall with a small, vertical slit or a natural rock ledge that cast a shadow. A watcher would note precisely where the patch of sunlight or the tip of a shadow fell at noon each day. As the seasons progressed, this sunspot would travel along the wall, moving northward as summer approached and southward as winter neared. The solstices were marked when the spot reached its farthest point and seemed to pause before reversing direction. This was not a single-day event but a tracked journey. It allowed them to count down the days to the pivotal turning points of the year with remarkable precision. In an environment where water was scarce and the growing season was limited, this knowledge was not abstract, it was the key to life. Knowing the exact optimal window to plant corn, beans, and squash just after the last frost and timed with the summer rains was a matter of communal survival. Their astronomy was directly rooted in the necessity of feeding their people. This celestial science was not confined to architecture. It was woven into the very fabric of their culture. Their astronomical knowledge was encoded into the spiral and concentric circle petroglyphs pecked into canyon walls, patterns that may have mapped cosmic cycles. It appeared in the intricate geometric designs painted on their pottery, symbols that perhaps told a story of the seasons. Even the layout of their cliff dwellings and pueblos often reflected a cosmic order, with certain structures aligned to cardinal directions or significant horizon points. For the ancestral Puebloans, there was no separation between the science of observing the heavens, the art that expressed its beauty, and the practical work of sustaining a society. It was a holistic worldview, a single, integrated understanding of how to live in harmony with a powerful and demanding land. By reading the messages written in sunlight and shadow, they transformed a challenging desert into a home they thrived in for centuries, leaving behind a silent testament written not in books, but in the alignment of a window and the path of the sun. The sophistication of these landscape calendars reaches its ultimate expression not in a single monument, but in an entire city designed as a cosmic diagram. In the heart of the Andes, the Inca Empire engineered a system of time and space so complete that it wove the heavens, the earth, and the social order into a single, living fabric. At the center of it all was the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, a building sheathed in gold that was considered the literal navel of the world. From this sacred point radiated 41 invisible lines called ceques, stretching out like spokes on a wheel across the entire valley and far into the surrounding mountains. These were not just pathways but conceptual threads that organized the entire universe of the Inca. Each ceque line was dotted with hundreds of sacred places called huacas. A huaca could be a natural spring, a uniquely shaped boulder, a mountain peak, or a built shrine. But they were far more than just religious sites. They were precise astronomical markers on a grand terrestrial clock face. The Inca astronomers knew that on a specific, critical date, the sun would rise from behind a particular distant mountain peak, which was a huaca. As it ascended, its light would touch another huaca, perhaps a spring, and finally set behind a third sacred stone on the opposite horizon. This celestial event did not just mark a day on a calendar, it activated an entire line of spiritual and social meaning. The ceque system was a breathtakingly holistic model of reality. Each of the 41 lines was assigned to a specific social group, a panoka or an ailu, who were responsible for the maintenance and ceremonies at the huacas along their line. This meant that the duty of observing the sun's alignment with a certain rock was also a sacred civic duty for that clan. The system integrated astronomy with hydrology because many huacas were water sources, linking the sun's cycle to the life-giving flow of springs and rivers. It mapped genealogy as the lines connected the living to their ancestral origins in the landscape, and it cemented political order with the Sapa Inca at the center, the conduit between the people and the cosmic forces. To measure time was to perform the rituals at the correct huaca on the correct day, which reinforced the social structure, ensured the sun's continued journey, and guaranteed the fertility of the land. Timekeeping was not a separate science, it was the active process of holding the empire itself together. The sun's passage along these predetermined celestial pathways told the people when to plant potatoes, when to harvest maize, and when to hold the great festival of Inti Raymi, the celebration of the sun god. In this worldview, a missed alignment was more than a scheduling error, it was a tear in the cosmic and social order. The ceque system represents perhaps the most complete fusion of landscape, astronomy, and society ever conceived, turning an entire empire into a ticking clock, where every sunrise was a reaffirmation of a perfectly interconnected world. Across the ocean, another urban center was solving the same celestial equation, but with the materials of a vast, fertile river valley. On the floodplain of the Mississippi River, where present-day St. Louis now stands, the city of Cahokia once thrived as the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico. At its peak around the year 1050, it was home to perhaps 20,000 people, a bustling metropolis of earthen pyramids, plazas, and neighborhoods that sprawled across the landscape. Feeding and organizing such a dense population required more than just abundant crops. It demanded a shared, precise understanding of time. The rhythm of their year was not kept on parchment or in a priest's memory, but was marked out on the open ground in a circle of towering wooden posts, a structure we now call Woodhenge. Archaeologists discovered the evidence for this great calendar not in stone, but in the pattern of dark, ancient soil stains left where massive cedar posts once stood. These posts were arranged in a wide circle over 400 feet in diameter. At its exact center stood a single, crucial observation post. From that central vantage point, an appointed watcher would look toward the eastern horizon. On the morning of the spring equinox, the rising sun would appear to crest directly over a specific post in the circle, bathing the city in the light of balanced day and night. On the summer solstice, the sun would rise aligned with a different post, marking its farthest journey north. This simple yet brilliant arrangement translated the sun's abstract path into a tangible, communal spectacle. It was a public calendar, its workings visible to anyone gathered in the plaza, turning a celestial event into a civic occasion. this solar calendar was the beating heart of Cahokia's survival and spirituality. Its primary function was profoundly practical, coordinating the intensive agriculture that fed the multitudes. The fertile Mississippi bottomlands could yield enormous harvests of corn, beans, and squash, but timing was everything. The equinox alignment signaled the time to prepare fields, while the solstice posts helped track the critical growing season, ensuring planting and harvest rituals happened at the optimal moment. A mistake of a few weeks could mean hunger for thousands, but Woodhenge's purpose extended far beyond the farm. Its alignments also pointed directly to the city's most imposing structure, the colossal Monk's Mound. This 100-foot-tall earthen pyramid, the largest in North America, was the spiritual and political center of Cahokia. On the days marked by the wooden calendar, grand processions and ceremonies would likely ascend its terraces. The sun's alignment with the posts may have signaled the start of a major festival, a gathering of leaders, or a ritual that connected the authority of the chief, residing atop the mound, with the life-giving power of the sun itself. The choice of material here is deeply revealing. While cultures in Europe and the Andes built in enduring stone, the people of Cahokia built their great clock from wood, a living but perishable material. This suggests a different philosophy of time. Their calendar was not meant to be eternal, but to be maintained, renewed, and actively participated in by each generation. The great cedar posts would eventually rot and need replacement. Recutting, transporting, and re-erecting these massive timbers was not a one-time engineering feat, but a recurring communal ritual. It was an act of renewal that mirrored the agricultural and solar cycles it tracked. By rebuilding Woodhenge, the community literally reaffirmed its covenant with the cosmos and its commitment to the shared future. This creates a poignant contrast, a calendar built not for the ages, but for the living, requiring constant care and collective effort to keep the rhythm of the world in motion. But the mastery of these ancient skywatchers went far beyond simply framing a sunrise or sunset. They learned to sculpt time itself using the most ephemeral of mediums, light and shadow. This was not a static alignment, but a dynamic performance where architecture became a stage for a celestial drama that unfolded minute by minute. By manipulating sunlight with breathtaking precision, they created moving markers that crawled across stone, illuminated hidden chambers, and even brought stone carvings to life. This theatrical approach transformed the measurement of time from a silent observation into a powerful, communal spectacle, one that blurred the line between science, art, and divine revelation. One of the most famous examples of this light and shadow play unfolds at the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. For most of the year, the stepped pyramid stands as a silent monument. But on the spring and autumn equinoxes, as the sun sets, a remarkable illusion occurs. The stepped corners of the pyramid cast a series of triangular shadows onto the northern staircase. These interlocking shadows merge to form the undulating body of a serpent, appearing to slither down from the temple at the summit to meet a stone serpent head at the base. This serpent shadow is a masterpiece of calculated architecture. The pyramid's exact angle, the number of steps, and the depth of each terrace were all engineered to create this specific effect only on the 2 days when day and night are in perfect balance. For the Maya, the serpent was a profound symbol of renewal and connection to the underworld. The descending serpent was not just a calendar marker, it was the god Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, descending from the heavens to bless the earth. It was a public, undeniable demonstration that the ruler and the priests held the knowledge to command even the sun's shadows, reinforcing their role as essential intermediaries between the people and the cosmic forces that governed fertility and the seasons. This was astronomy as political theater, where a shadow proved divine favor. A similar, though profoundly different, manipulation of light occurs deep within the rock-cut temples of Abu Simbel in Egypt. Built by Pharaoh Ramesses II, the Greater Temple is oriented so that twice a year, on dates believed to correspond to his coronation and his birthday, the rays of the rising sun travel over 60 meters down the main hall. They pierce the inner darkness to illuminate 3 of the 4 statues seated in the sanctuary at the very back. The light falls directly on the figures of the sun god Ra-Horakhti, the deified Rameses himself, and the god Amun. The 4th statue of the god Ptah remains forever in shadow as he is associated with the underworld. This is not a vague wash of light, but a focused beam that highlights these specific deities for a limited time before retreating. The engineering required to achieve this is staggering. The entire massive temple facade, with its colossal seated statues, and the precise angle of the long interior corridor, had to be carved from solid cliff rock with this single, fleeting annual event in mind. The effect proclaims that the pharaoh's reign is literally illuminated by the sun god, placing him in the direct company of the gods. It turns a memorial of stone into a living, solar-powered confirmation of royal and divine power. These phenomena reveal a quantum leap in understanding. It moved from 2-dimensional alignments, lining up a doorway with a horizon point, to a sophisticated 3-dimensional choreography of light. The architects had to calculate not just a direction, but the exact solar altitude for a specific day, the depth an interior chamber needed to be to receive the beam, and the precise height of a step to cast a shadow of a certain length. This required a deep, practical knowledge of solar geometry and an ability to scale that knowledge into monumental architecture. The purpose was ceremonial impact. These were not secret observations for a priestly elite, but grand public events designed to inspire awe and reinforce social order. When the crowd gathered at Chichen Itza saw the serpent shadow descend, or when the priests at Abu Simbel witnessed the sunbeam touch the pharaoh's statue, it was a moment of collective validation. The cosmos itself was performing its appointed role, and the human structures that prompted that performance proved that society was in harmony with the universe's deepest rhythms. In this way, light and shadow became the most eloquent hands on the clock, writing the passage of sacred time not in numbers but in unforgettable celestial drama. Yet this incredible sophistication presents a profound challenge for modern researchers. How can we be sure that a stone window framing a solstice sunrise was an ancient observatory and not just a beautiful accident of architecture? This question lies at the very heart of a rigorous field known as archaeoastronomy, a discipline that walks a careful line between compelling evidence and what some critics dismiss as speculative stargazing. The fundamental problem is one of intention. With thousands of ancient sites and countless horizon features, some alignments are statistically bound to occur by pure chance. A doorway facing east will, by default, face a sunrise twice a year. So how do we distinguish a cosmic clock from a coincidence? The answer requires a meticulous, interdisciplinary detective story. Researchers don't just measure angles with a theodolite. They bring in a full toolkit of methods. They perform statistical analyses to see if multiple alignments at a site cluster around key solar or lunar dates more often than random chance would allow. They scour ethnographic records and oral histories from descendant communities, searching for clues about how their ancestors perceived the sky. And they combine this with the hard evidence from archaeology, the context of an artifact's placement or the stratigraphy of a site, to build a layered case for intentionality. A single alignment proves nothing, but a pattern of alignments supported by cultural evidence begins to tell a story. The ongoing debate over Stonehenge's purpose perfectly illustrates this scientific tension. For decades, the dominant narrative focused on its solar alignments, particularly the summer solstice sunrise over the heel stone. But a compelling theory proposed by researchers like Gerald Hawkins suggested the monument also encodes a sophisticated lunar calendar, tracking the moon's complex 18.6-year cycle through various stone alignments. This idea was met with significant skepticism from more traditional archaeologists. critics argued that the proposed lunar lines were less precise than the solar ones, and that the evidence relied on connecting stones that may have been moved or eroded over millennia. They questioned whether Neolithic builders possessed the need or the means to track such a long, subtle cycle with such monumental permanence. This isn't merely an academic dispute, it's a vital dialogue about how we interpret the past. The lunar calendar theory pushes us to see Stonehenge not just as a solar temple, but as a multi-generational computer in stone, built to model deeper cosmic rhythms. The skepticism demands rigorous proof, reminding us that our modern fascination with celestial mysteries can sometimes lead us to see patterns that the builders themselves never intended. This back and forth is not a weakness of the field, but its greatest strength. It forces a constant refinement of questions and methods. Ultimately, the most important tool in archaeoastronomy isn't a surveying instrument, but cultural context. An alignment is only meaningful if it was meaningful to the people who built it. A shaft of light illuminating a carved spiral is a breathtaking sight, but it becomes a calendar only if that community gathered to witness it and acted upon what it signified. Did they hold a festival? Did they begin a planting season? Did they recite a creation story? Without understanding the lived experience, the beliefs, and the practical needs of the civilization, we are left with mere geometry, empty lines connecting stones to stars. The true goal is to move beyond the cold mechanics of alignment and step into the worldview of the people for whom that sunrise was not just an astronomical event, but a conversation with the divine, a command from the cosmos, and a promise of continuity for their entire world. So the true genius of these landscape clocks lies in what they were built to do. They were never just oversized calendars for telling farmers when to plant. They were the central nervous system of an entire civilization, a technology that fused practical survival with profound cosmic authority. To control the calendar was to control reality itself. A ruler who could publicly predict the sun's return on the solstice, or who presided over a ceremony where light magically illuminated a sacred statue, was not merely an administrator. He was a mediator between the people and the gods, a figure whose very legitimacy was written in sunlight and shadow. This was power made visible. When the Inca emperor stood at the Coricancha, the sun's journey along the ceque lines validated his divine right to rule. When the Maya crowd saw the serpent shadow descend Kukulkan's pyramid, they witnessed their king's unique connection to the feathered serpent god. The calendar was the ultimate source of political authority because it demonstrated a command over the most fundamental force in their universe, time. This celestial scheduling extended into every facet of social life, creating a rhythm that everyone moved to. The dates marked by these monuments were not silent holidays, they were the great engines of community. They dictated when distant clans would travel to the ceremonial center for a festival, creating vital opportunities for trade, marriage alliances, and the exchange of news. They scheduled when tribute was due, turning a tax collection into a sacred obligation timed with a solar event. They could even organize activities like communal building projects or the mustering of forces, aligning human effort with cosmic cycles. These gatherings at the solstice or equinox were more than parties. They were the moments when a scattered population physically came together to reaffirm their shared identity. Through shared ritual, song, and spectacle under the aligned sun, they remembered who they were and to what greater order they belonged. The calendar built social cohesion as deliberately as it tracked the seasons. Beyond politics and logistics, these sites were libraries of living myth. The landscape itself became a storybook. That mountain peak where the sun rose on the equinox wasn't just a marker, it was the place where the first ancestor emerged from the underworld. The rock spire that framed the winter solstice moon might be a petrified giant from the creation story. By observing celestial bodies interact with these features, the community was not just measuring time, they were watching their sacred stories play out in real time year after year. The horizon was a permanent communal screen where cosmology was performed. This transformed timekeeping from a mechanical act into a participatory ritual of world building. Every correct alignment was a proof that the myths were true and that the community was playing its correct role in maintaining cosmic order. To keep the calendar was to continuously recreate the world. This is why the scale was always monumental. A small, portable sundial could tell the time of day for an individual, but it could not command the faith of thousands. A massive stone circle, a pyramid that cast a serpent shadow, or a city-wide network of sightlines was public, immutable, and awe-inspiring. It made the calendar an objective, authoritative fact that no one could reasonably dispute. Everyone could see the same sun pierce the same doorway. This visibility, however, also cemented control. The knowledge to interpret these grand instruments, to know which alignment meant which festival was due, was often held closely by a priestly or ruling elite. The calendar became a source of exclusive power, even as its results were publicly celebrated. It wove timekeeping directly into the hierarchy of the early state, making the social order feel as natural and inevitable as the rising sun. In the end, these monuments show us that for ancient civilizations, to measure time was to define reality, to build community, and to hold the very keys to power. The stones themselves are a silent testament to a different kind of genius, one of pure, applied physics. Before a single ray of light could be framed, these massive markers had to be coaxed from the earth, shaped, and moved into perfect position, often across impossible distances. This was engineering without written plans or metal tools, a logistical puzzle solved with wood, rope, stone, and staggering human coordination. Consider the blue stones at Stonehenge. Geological analysis reveals that some of these smaller, distinctive stones originated in the Preseli Hills of Wales, over 150 miles away. How does a Neolithic community transport a 4-ton block of dolerite across such a vast and varied landscape? The prevailing theory involves a symphony of methods. The stones were likely quarried using heat and water to fracture the rock, then loaded onto wooden sledges. These sledges would have been pulled by teams of people over log rollers, a system requiring constant coordination as rollers were moved from the back to the front. For river crossings and coastal stretches, they may have been lashed to rafts or even partially buoyant frames, navigating waterways to shorten the overland haul. Every mile was a victory of collective will over sheer mass. This was not a frantic dash, but a slow, deliberate procession that may have taken years, transforming the journey itself into a moving ceremony, a pilgrimage in stone that physically connected the sacred source of the material to its final, celestial purpose. Across the world in the Peruvian Andes, the Inca demonstrated a similar mastery over megaliths, but with a focus on precision fitting rather than long-distance transport. At sites like Ollantaytambo, you find colossal red granite blocks, each weighing well over 50 tons, quarried from a mountainside across a deep river valley and a plain. They were not just dragged, they were precisely shaped. Without iron tools, workers used harder stones to pound and grind the granite into form, a process of relentless pecking that could take months for a single block. Then came the move. The most likely route involved building a massive earthen ramp from the quarry down to the valley floor. The stones were probably lowered on ropes controlled by teams anchoring from above, a terrifying exercise in controlled descent. Once across the valley, they were likely pulled up another temporary ramp to their positions in the temple walls. The true marvel, however, is in the joining. These stones are not held together by mortar. Instead, each face was painstakingly shaped to interlock perfectly with its neighbors, like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The fit is so exact that you cannot slide a piece of paper between them, a technique that provided incredible stability in an earthquake-prone region. This stone knitting required an advanced, intuitive grasp of geometry and spatial reasoning, a knowledge passed down through practice, not textbooks. Such projects were never just about the stones, they were about the people, feeding, housing, and organizing a workforce large enough to move mountains, literally, was a managerial feat equal to the engineering. For a project spanning decades, like the major phases of Stonehenge or the construction of a great pyramid, this meant creating a temporary city of laborers. This required a surplus of food, managed by the very calendar the monument was being built to track. It demanded social structures capable of mobilizing hundreds or thousands of people, perhaps as a form of rotational labor duty owed to the community or its leaders. Knowledge transfer was the most fragile link. The exact astronomical alignment intended for a doorway had to survive from the initial visionary who plotted it, through the master builder who laid out the foundation, to the crews who erected the lintel, a process that could outlast any single individual. This suggests a rigorous oral tradition and apprenticeship system, where the why of the alignment was as carefully taught as the how of the construction. They were not just building a structure, they were building a permanent stone embodiment of a truth that could not be forgotten. The monument was the final, fail-safe backup for the knowledge itself. Once the last stone was set, the alignment was locked in, a teacher that would never pass away, ensuring that even if the oral traditions faded, the sun itself would continue to deliver its lesson on the appointed day forever. This transforms our view of these sites from simple temples or tombs into the ultimate hybrid machines, part observatory, part calendar, and part immortal memory bank, forged by a society's total commitment to bridging the human and the cosmic. But the stones and alignments speak a language far deeper than simple measurement. Every curve, every chosen material, every relationship to water or rock was a deliberate word in a silent, sacred text. This was a symbolic language where the very form of a monument communicated the core philosophy of the civilization that built it. A simple circle was never just a shape, it was a representation of the eternal cycle, the endless loop of seasons, life, and celestial return. A towering pyramid was not merely a platform, it was a symbolic sacred mountain, a constructed axis mundi designed to bridge the earthly realm with the heavens above. The architecture was a physical metaphor, making abstract cosmic principles tangible and walkable. The choice of stone itself was a loaded decision. In many Andean cultures, greenstone was highly prized and associated with water, fertility, and vitality. To use it in a ceremonial space was to invoke those life-giving forces. Quartz and other reflective stones might be incorporated for their ability to catch and scatter light, perhaps seen as capturing the essence of the sun or stars, turning a solid wall into a shimmering, celestial surface. This symbolic vocabulary extended to the incorporation of the natural world in its most dynamic form, water. At the high-altitude site of Tiwanaku near Lake Titicaca, archaeologists have uncovered extensive and precise networks of stone-lined canals within the ceremonial core. These were not for irrigation. Their layout, orientation, and reflective surfaces are believed by some researchers to have been a carefully engineered mirror of the Milky Way as it appeared in the night sky over the Andes. Walking beside these canals would have been like walking alongside the river of stars, physically uniting the celestial and terrestrial realms in a single, contemplative experience. This transforms a site from a collection of buildings into a holistic model of the universe. Every alignment held a dual meaning. A doorway framing the winter solstice sunrise was both a practical calendar alert and a symbolic rebirth of the sun god, a promise of light returning from the darkest point. A corridor oriented to the rising of the Pleiades star cluster might signal the planting season, but the stars themselves were often seen as ancestral figures or agricultural deities. The landscape marker, the celestial event, and the myth were a single, intertwined idea expressed in 3 dimensions. This created a multi-layered text where an initiated person could read meaning in every facet. The type of stone spoke of elemental power, the shape spoke of cosmic structure, the alignment spoke of sacred timing, and the relationship to water or mountains spoke of a living, spiritual geography. For the average person, the winter solstice ceremony at the temple was a powerful festival. For the priest or astronomer, it was the climax of a story written in architecture, where the sun performed its scripted role, activating the symbolic meaning embedded in the stone. To truly understand these places, we must learn to read this silent language. It moves us beyond seeing them as clever astronomical instruments or impressive feats of engineering. It allows us to glimpse them as profound expressions of identity and philosophy. They were attempts to answer the deepest human questions about time, origin, and humanity's place in the cosmos, not through written doctrine, but through a permanent, experiential scripture carved into the very bones of the earth. The landscape itself became a book, and to live within it was to be constantly immersed in its teachings. This shared impulse to mark the heavens on earth creates a breathtaking pattern across the ancient world. From the sun-drenched plateaus of Mesoamerica to the misty moors of northern Europe, cultures with no conceivable contact were raising stones and orienting temples to the same celestial rhythms. The Great Pyramids of Giza in Egypt are precisely aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of a fraction of a degree, their sides facing true north, south, east, and west. Thousands of miles and centuries away, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan in Mexico also exhibits a precise alignment, its western facade oriented to the setting sun on specific days that divided their ritual calendar. Across the Atlantic, the immense parallel rows of standing stones at Carnac in France, stretching for miles, are not random. Many of these granite menhirs are arranged to frame the rising sun on the solstices and equinoxes, creating a monumental landscape calendar on a scale that defies easy comprehension. These are not isolated curiosities, but part of a global tapestry of celestial observation. This pattern forces us to confront a profound historical mystery. How do we explain such striking parallels between civilizations separated by vast oceans and millennia? Scholars have long debated two compelling possibilities. The first is diffusion, the idea that this sophisticated knowledge was carried by ancient seafarers or migrating peoples, spreading from one center of innovation to the rest of the world. The second, and perhaps more awe-inspiring, is the concept of independent invention. This suggests that different human societies, when faced with the same fundamental problems of survival and the same magnificent, predictable sky, arrived at remarkably similar solutions through observation, trial, and a shared cognitive toolkit. The evidence increasingly points to independent invention as the more likely driver. While some contact across oceans remains a tantalizing possibility, the timelines often do not match up, and the specific methods each culture developed are deeply rooted in their local environment and worldview. This makes the parallels not less impressive but more so. It reveals something fundamental about the human mind and our relationship with the cosmos. When you look up at the sun, moon, and stars, certain patterns are universally obvious. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It shifts north and south with the seasons. The moon follows a more complex but still observable cycle. Any society with the need to track time for agriculture or ceremony, and with the organizational capacity to build monuments, could independently discover these patterns and seek to memorialize them. The universality of the need led to a universality of response, yet within this grand pattern of similarity, the fascinating variations tell an equally important story. The specific tools and priorities of each civilization were shaped by their unique circumstances. The Inca, masters of a mountainous empire, became geniuses of the horizon calendar, using the immutable profiles of the Andes as their primary reference points. Their astronomy was integrated into the very topography of their home, In stark contrast, the Maya of the dense rainforest developed a highly abstract, mathematical astronomy. Without clear, distant horizons, they turned inward, creating precise calendrical tables and using complex cycles like the long count, which tracked time over spans of thousands of years. They sought to predict celestial events like eclipses with mathematical models, a pursuit of predictive power that was less about immediate survival and more about understanding deeper cosmic order. The ancient Egyptians, living along the predictable flood cycle of the Nile, tied their astronomy intimately to this life-giving event, using the heliacal rising of the star Sirius to predict the annual inundation. Their monuments, while precisely aligned, served a state religion centered on a divine pharaoh, making their celestial architecture an expression of permanent, God-given order. Meanwhile, the builders of Karnak in Brittany used the most abundant local material, granite, to create a forest of stones that turned the entire landscape into a ritual space aligned with solar and likely lunar cycles, reflecting a more communal, perhaps less centrally organized societal structure. These distinct approaches highlight a crucial truth: the goal was universal, but the path was uniquely local. Every culture filtered the cosmos through the lens of their environment, their resources, and their belief systems. This global perspective does more than catalog ancient ingenuity. It underscores a profound connection. It shows that the drive to understand our place in time, to seek order in the heavens, and to leave a permanent mark of that understanding is a defining thread of the human story. From the deserts of Egypt to the highlands of Peru, we see the same spark of curiosity and the same monumental ambition to answer the most persistent questions of existence. We were all, in our own ways, building clocks to converse with eternity. Yet this ancient conversation between sky and stone is not confined to the past. For many cultures around the world, this knowledge is not a relic to be excavated, but a living, breathing practice that continues to guide daily life. The true legacy of these landscape clocks is found not only in silent ruins, but in the enduring traditions of indigenous communities who have maintained an unbroken connection to their ancestral skies. In the American Southwest, for instance, several Pueblo communities continue to use traditional horizon calendars to determine the timing of planting, harvesting, and sacred ceremonies. A knowledge keeper might watch from a specific vantage point, noting when the sun rises behind a particular mesa or when a certain star first appears in the dawn glow. This is not an abstract exercise. It is a practical, community-sustaining science passed down orally through generations. As one cultural practitioner has shared, this practice creates a profound intimacy with the land, where the horizon becomes a familiar face, its features marking the rhythm of the year with a reliability that no paper calendar can match. This living knowledge challenges a persistent and harmful narrative, the idea that the builders of these sites belong to lost or dead civilizations. They are not lost, their descendants are here, actively preserving and interpreting a wisdom that stretches back centuries. Ethnographers working in partnership with these communities have documented how this astronomical knowledge is woven into stories, songs, agricultural practices, and ceremonial protocols. It is a holistic system where observing the sun's position is inseparable from offering prayers for rain, knowing when to gather medicinal plants, or understanding the right time to tell a specific creation story. The calendar is not just a tool, it is a thread in the fabric of cultural identity. Recognizing this living legacy is crucial for a more ethical and accurate approach to archaeology. It shifts the perspective from studying a forgotten people to learning from continuing knowledge holders. This partnership can help researchers ask better questions and interpret sites with greater nuance, understanding that a stone alignment might have served multiple, layered purposes that only the living tradition can fully illuminate. Furthermore, these practices offer profound insights for our contemporary world. In an era of climate uncertainty and disconnection from natural cycles, these horizon calendars model a sustainable and attentive way of interacting with our environment. They teach observation over extraction, patience over immediacy, and a recognition that human time is a small part of a much grander cosmic rhythm. The wisdom is not in the stone alone, but in the ongoing relationship between a community, their land, and the sky, a relationship that continues to mark time, not with ticking hands, but with the silent, majestic journey of the sun across a sacred horizon. The perfect alignment of a solstice sunrise is a promise written in stone, but it is a promise the cosmos does not always keep. Even the most precise calendar carved into the landscape faces a slow, relentless enemy, the subtle drift of time itself. No solar or lunar calendar is perfectly accurate forever. The solar year is not exactly 365 days, but roughly 365 and 1/4 days. A lunar month is not a neat 29.5 days. Over decades and centuries, these tiny fractions add up, causing a phenomenon known as calendrical drift. A marker designed to frame the spring equinox sunrise might, after 100 years, see the sun rise noticeably to one side. After several centuries, the sacred light might miss the altar entirely. This was not a minor error, it was a creeping crisis that threatened the very foundation of an agricultural society. Imagine the growing dread among the priest astronomers as they watched, year after year, the sun's rising point slide imperceptibly away from the sacred stone. Their entire authority and their people's survival depended on the calendar being correct. If the planting festival was held based on a monument that was now out of sync, crops could be sown too early and killed by frost, or too late and withered by drought. The result would be hunger, social unrest, and a devastating loss of faith in the leaders who were supposed to be the keepers of cosmic order. The monuments were eternal, but the knowledge they encoded required constant vigilance and sometimes courageous correction. Evidence from across the ancient world suggests that civilizations did not passively accept this drift. They detected it through generations of meticulous observation and devised ingenious methods to bring their earthly clocks back into harmony with the sky. One compelling example may come from the banks of the Nile. The great temple built by Pharaoh Amenhotep III, featuring the famous Colossi of Memnon, was originally aligned to a significant solar event, possibly a solstice sunrise. Over centuries, the cumulative era of the Egyptian civil calendar, which was 365 days long without leap years, would have caused this alignment to shift. Archaeoastronomers have noted that later modifications to the temple complex, perhaps under subsequent rulers, appear to subtly reorient certain axes or add new architectural features. This could represent a physical correction, an attempt to recalibrate the stone instrument to the true celestial north or to a newly important star. It was a quiet admission that even the pharaoh's divine order needed occasional adjustment to match the reality of the heavens. Such corrections reveal a society that was scientifically adaptable, treating its cosmology as a dynamic, living system rather than a static, unchanging dogma. The sky was the ultimate teacher, and when the lesson changed, the students had to update their notes. The methods of correction were as varied as the cultures themselves. In some cases, the solution might have been to simply build a new marker. A new standing stone could be erected a short distance from the old one, precisely positioned to catch the sun's new rising point for the equinox. The old stone was not discarded, it became a historical record, a testament to the earlier understanding. In other systems, like the Inca ceque network, the solution may have been more fluid. If a particular mountain peak Huaca no longer aligned correctly, the ceremonial focus might have shifted to a different Huaca along the same spiritual line, or a new ritual might have been developed to account for the shift, keeping the symbolic system intact even as the physical alignment changed. The most profound response, however, was intellectual, a refinement of the calendar's mathematical rules. The Maya, obsessed with long-term accuracy, developed extraordinarily precise calculations for the solar year and the cycles of Venus. Their calendar kept in sync over vast stretches of time because their astronomer priests were willing to observe, calculate, and adjust their models. This ongoing work transformed their monuments from simple alignment tools into embodiments of a sophisticated, self-correcting science. The need to fight calendrical drift forced these societies to look deeper, to measure more carefully, and to think in longer spans of time. It turned astronomy from a ritual of confirmation into a dynamic process of discovery. The true test of their cosmic wisdom was not in building a perfect clock, but in knowing how to fix it when it inevitably began to run slow, ensuring that human time never lost its sacred connection to the eternal rhythm of the stars. The stone circle was not just a calendar for the state, but a shared stage for every person in the community. For a farmer who had spent the last moon preparing his fields, the journey to the sacred site before dawn was a walk of profound personal significance. He would have felt the deep chill of the winter air, seen his breath fog in the first gray light, and heard the quiet murmur of hundreds of others gathering in the half-dark. This was not an abstract astronomical event, it was a collective breath held. All eyes would be fixed on the horizon notch between two distant hills, the place where, if the priests were right and the ancestors' stones were true, the sun would make its promised return. The tension was both communal and deeply individual. For him, the precise moment the first sliver of light broke the horizon was a personal signal. It meant the deepest cold was ending, the soil would soon be warm enough for the first seeds, and the cycle of life was beginning anew. That flash of golden light piercing the center of the trilithon was a physical relief, a confirmation that his family would eat in the months to come. It transformed anxiety into hope, a private feeling amplified by the shared gasp, and then the joyous shouts of the crowd around him. His personal security was inextricably linked to this public, celestial validation. For the priest conducting the ceremony, the experience was one of immense responsibility and transcendent connection. Standing at the central altar, her role was to be the human conduit between the people and the power of the sun. She would have spent nights in preparation, fasting and chanting, ensuring every ritual object was placed with exacting care. As the dawn approached, she would watch the shadows retreat across the carved symbols at her feet. The collective anticipation of the crowd was a palpable force, a silence so deep it felt like the land itself was waiting. Then the calculated moment arrived. A razor-thin beam of sunlight, traveling across miles, would slip perfectly through the temple doorway and strike the offering stone before her, setting the sacred oils alight or illuminating the face of a deity. In that instant, her knowledge was proven correct, her authority affirmed by the cosmos. The resulting roar from the people was not just for the sun, but for the human system that predicted its grace. For her, it was a moment of supreme professional and spiritual fulfillment, a direct conversation with the divine that she facilitated for everyone. It was the ultimate performance review, passed not by a king, but by the universe. These events shaped identity from childhood. A child brought to the solstice gathering year after year learned their place in the world through sensory memory. The smell of burning herbs, the taste of special festival bread, the sound of the elders' chant rising as the sun did, these sensations wove the cosmic order into their very being. They came to understand that they were part of something far larger than their family or village. They were participants in a story that included the mountains, the stars, and the generations that came before and would follow. The alignment was not a distant fact, but a felt experience of belonging. When that person later became a parent and pointed to the horizon to explain to their own child where the sun would rise on the longest day, they were passing on more than a date. They were passing on a living relationship with time and place. The monument provided the unchanging reference point, but the human experience, the chill, the anticipation, the collective joy, was what gave it meaning. This is how grand cosmic cycles became intimate personal milestones, turning astronomical precision into the rhythm of a human heart, forever linking the individual's life story to the eternal journey of the sun. The alignment of a solstice sunrise was not a democratic spectacle. While the entire community might gather to witness the dawn, the precise moment of celestial contact was often a secret held by stone and shadow, visible only from a single, privileged vantage point. This was the architecture of exclusive knowledge. At many sacred sites, the perfect alignment could only be observed from a specific spot: a small priest's chamber, a solitary standing stone, or a raised platform reserved for the ruler. From the crowded plaza below, the people saw the grand sunrise and felt its power, but only the elite observer, positioned with exacting care, could see the beam of light pierce the heart of the altar or watch a shadow touch a precise carved line. This physical restriction created a powerful hierarchy of understanding. The elite possessed the full, clear text of the celestial message, while the populace experienced the emotional headline. Controlling this cosmological information became one of the most potent political tools in the ancient world. It allowed a ruler or priestly class to act as the sole interpreter between the people and the cosmos. Their authority was not just claimed, it was visibly demonstrated and renewed by the heavens themselves each time they correctly announced a festival or planting season based on a sign only they could fully see. The design of certain monuments seems deliberately crafted to manage this revelation. In the Maya world, architectural complexes known as E-groups provide a compelling example. These typically consist of a long, low platform on the west side, facing a single pyramid to the east. From the plaza, everyone could watch the sun rise over the pyramid. But researchers suggest that from a specific point on the western platform, likely a restricted space, an observer would see the sun rise directly along the central axis of the pyramid, perhaps even illuminating a niche or marker invisible from the ground. The event was public, but its precise meaning was filtered through a privileged lens. Similarly, the inner chamber at Newgrange, accessible only by crawling down a long, narrow passage, culminates in that sacred space where the winter solstice sunbeam lands. While the community outside celebrated the sun's return, only a select few could be inside the mound to witness the light actually touching the ancestral symbols in the darkness. This transformed an astronomical event into a powerful performance of controlled revelation. The elite did not merely predict the sun's return, they staged its arrival, framing themselves as the essential conduits of cosmic grace. This system brilliantly served two purposes. It created a compelling justification for social hierarchy, making leadership feel divinely ordained and technically necessary. Simultaneously, it united the community under a shared, awe-inspiring narrative. Everyone benefited from the accurate calendar, everyone participated in the festivals, and everyone felt part of a cosmic order. The genius was in making the source of that order seem accessible yet mysteriously exclusive, a balance that turned the measurement of time into the bedrock of stable, complex societies for generations. But the ambition of these builders reached far beyond marking a single sunrise. For some, the goal was not just to track celestial bodies, but to capture the entire night sky and bring it down to Earth. This is the profound concept of mirroring, where the landscape itself was transformed into a permanent map of the heavens. It was an architectural declaration of a sacred principle often summarized as above, so below. The belief that patterns in the sky held a divine blueprint, and that by replicating those patterns on the ground, a community could align its destiny with the cosmic order. One of the most famous and debated examples of this is the arrangement of the three great pyramids at Giza. For centuries, observers noted their distinctive, offset alignment. In the 1990s, a theory proposed by Robert Bovell captured the public imagination. He suggested that the layout of the three main pyramids mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt in the constellation Orion, as they would have appeared in the sky around 2500 BC. According to this idea, the Nile River was intentionally mirrored as well, representing the Milky Way in this grand terrestrial diagram. The theory argues that this was not a random placement, but a deliberate act to create a sacred landscape where the pharaoh's soul, upon passing, could ascend directly to join the eternal stars in the imperishable region of the sky. This concept of a stellar afterlife was central to Egyptian religion, giving the mirroring a powerful spiritual purpose. It would mean the entire Giza Plateau was designed as a colossal resurrection machine, built in stone to mirror a specific celestial pattern for all eternity. Similarly, across the Atlantic, the immense city of Teotihuacan in Mexico presents another tantalizing puzzle. The city's main avenue, the Street of the Dead, is flanked by massive pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. Researchers have long studied the curious, non-linear distances between these major structures. Some have proposed that the layout does not just align with solar directions, but that the relative distances between the pyramids correspond to the distances between the planets in our solar system. If true, this would mean the builders scaled down the solar system and stamped it onto their urban plan, turning their city into a walkable model of the cosmos. While these specific theories remain hotly contested within academic circles, with critics pointing to statistical uncertainties and alternative explanations, they point to a deeper, undeniable truth about the ancient mind. Whether intended as a precise scale model or a powerful symbolic gesture, the impulse to mirror reflects a universal human desire to find our place within a vast and often intimidating universe. By building a terrestrial copy of the heavens, a civilization could literally ground the cosmos. The mysterious, distant stars became familiar landmarks in their own city. The overwhelming scale of the universe was reduced to a human scale, something that could be walked, touched, and understood. This practice of mirroring would have fundamentally transformed the experience of time and space for the people who lived within these designed landscapes. If your city is a map of the solar system, then your daily walk to the market is a journey through the planets. If the pyramids are Orion's belt, then the pharaoh's tomb is not just a resting place, but a gateway to the stars. This creates a profound intimacy with the cosmos, blurring the line between the earthly and the celestial until they become a single, continuous reality. The act of mirroring, then, is the ultimate expression of the ideas we have explored. It moves beyond using the landscape as a clock to track celestial cycles and reimagines the entire landscape as a permanent, three-dimensional portrait of the sky itself. It was an attempt to solve the ultimate mystery of existence not through observation alone, but through sacred replication, building a heaven on earth to ensure that human life would forever resonate with the harmony of the spheres. Stone is the language of forever. When these ancient builders chose to work with granite, sandstone, or basalt, they were making a profound statement about the nature of time itself. A wooden post rots, a thatched roof decays, but a 20-ton slab of stone precisely placed could outlast the memory of the civilization that raised it. This was not just a practical choice for durability, it was a symbolic act of defiance against the fleeting nature of human life. By carving their cosmic understanding into the most permanent material they could find, they were attempting to fix a truth for eternity. The calendar was not a temporary guide, it was an eternal law, and it deserved a medium that matched its timeless authority. The very act of wrestling these megaliths into place screamed of supreme importance. No society invests generations of labor in moving mountains unless the purpose is absolutely foundational to their existence. The stone became a covenant, a promise made by one generation to all that would follow, that the knowledge of when to plant, when to celebrate, and when to honor the gods would never be lost. It transformed the calendar from an idea in the mind of a priest into an objective fact in the landscape, a truth so solid you could touch it, a certainty that would remain long after the names of its builders had turned to dust. Yet not all eternal materials were quarried from cliffs. Some were shaped from the living skin of the earth itself. Across the ancient world, cultures became masters of earthworks, sculpting the land into colossal forms that merged seamlessly with the horizon. Consider the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, a winding quarter-mile-long effigy built from layers of clay and stone. From the ground, its coils are a mysterious pattern. But from above, it reveals itself as a giant serpent, perhaps swallowing a cosmic egg, its body aligned with the setting sun on the summer solstice. This was not a structure placed upon the land, it was the land itself, awakened and given form. Building with earth carried a different but equally powerful symbolism. It spoke of an organic, maternal connection to the Earth Mother. The calendar was not an imposed tool, but something that grew naturally from the soil that fed the people. By molding the earth into a celestial marker, they were literally aligning their sustenance with the cycles of the sky, weaving agriculture and astronomy into a single, living entity. The effort here, too, was monumental, requiring the movement of countless baskets of soil by hand, a communal act of creation that bound the people to the monument through their shared labor and sweat. The choice of material often went far deeper than simple durability or symbolism. Specific stones were frequently selected for properties that we are only beginning to understand. At some sites, the type of rock appears deliberately chosen for how it interacts with the environment. Certain stones, like the blue stones at Stonehenge, are known to emit a low resonant tone when struck, a phenomenon that would have been magical in a ceremonial context, perhaps used to call the community to gather or to mark the moment of a celestial event. Other stones contain magnetic anomalies that can deflect a simple compass needle, a property that might have been interpreted as holding a powerful spirit or a connection to unseen forces. The visual appearance was also critical. Stones with crystalline inclusions that sparkled in the dawn light, or rocks with striking colors like the red granite used by the Inca, were not chosen at random. They were selected because under the specific, angled light of a solstice sunrise or a lunar standstill, they would transform. A dull gray surface could suddenly blaze with reflected fire, or a carved spiral could seem to pulse with inner light. These were not inert building blocks, they were active participants in the celestial theater, chosen to enhance the drama and meaning of the alignment. This meticulous selection reveals a holistic worldview where every element carried meaning. The calendar was not a separate, functional device, it was the physical expression of a complete philosophy. The stone represented permanence and cosmic law. The earth represented fertility and organic connection. The specific acoustic or visual properties of the materials added a layer of ritual power and sensory experience. Together, they created a multi-sensory instrument for marking time, one that you could see, touch, and even hear. This approach reflects a fundamental truth about these ancient timekeepers. They did not see the calendar as a human invention, a disposable tool to be updated and discarded. They saw it as a discovered truth, a fundamental rhythm of the universe that was as real and immutable as the mountains themselves. And so, they embedded that truth into the only things they knew that could rival the mountains in endurance, the stone bones of the earth and the very soil from which life sprang. In doing so, they built clocks that were meant to tick not for centuries, but for as long as the world turned, a silent conversation between humanity and eternity, written in the only language they knew would last. The precision of Callanish's stones speaks to a knowledge that was never written down. On the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, a complex arrangement of slender standing stones forms a cross shape, with a central stone circle and avenues reaching out toward the cardinal directions. For centuries, it stood as a beautiful mystery. Then, researchers realized its central avenue aligns perfectly with the southernmost rising point of the Moon during its major standstill, an event that occurs only once every 18.6 years. The builders calibrated this site with breathtaking accuracy, yet they left behind no manuals, no star charts, no written calculations of any kind. Their entire system of celestial engineering existed solely in memory, passed from one generation to the next through the living thread of oral tradition. This was a science conducted without archives, where the sky itself was the primary text and human memory was the only library. So how did they do it? The answer lies in a sophisticated culture of knowledge transmission that turned abstract astronomy into a tangible, communal possession. Complex lunar cycles were not memorized as numbers but as stories. The Moon's long journey might be personified as a wandering hero, its 18-year cycle mapped onto the chapters of his epic saga. The stars were not coordinates but ancestors or animals, their movements across the sky forming a narrative that explained the seasons. These stories were the mnemonic code, embedding astronomical data within a framework of meaning that was easier to remember and far more engaging than a dry list of observations. Ritual practice cemented this knowledge in the body. The act of walking the processional avenue at Calendrical at a specific time of night, chanting a specific song that recounted the Moon's phases, physically and emotionally ingrained the celestial pattern. The rhythm of the chant mirrored the rhythm of the cycle. The journey along the stones became a walking calendar. Apprenticeship was the final, crucial layer. A young learner would not be given a textbook, but would spend years alongside a master, watching the horizon, listening to the stories, and participating in the rituals. They learned through doing, through correcting, and through experiencing the awe of the alignment itself. The knowledge was holistic, blending astronomy with mythology, ethics, and practical survival skills into a single, inseparable wisdom. This system was remarkably robust, capable of preserving intricate information across centuries. Yet, for all its strength, it possessed a profound fragility. Oral tradition is a living chain, and every link is vital. Social collapse, conquest, forced cultural change, or even a generation where no worthy apprentice steps forward can break that chain forever. When that happens, the specific meanings, the stories, and the nuanced interpretations evaporate like morning mist. The stones remain, but their voice falls silent. We can measure the alignment at Calendrical and know with scientific certainty that it points to the lunar standstill, but we can only guess at the ceremony that took place there, the name of the Moon hero in their stories, or the specific prayers recited when that distant silver disk finally slid into place between the pillars. That loss is immeasurable. It serves as a sobering reminder that our understanding of the ancient world is built on fragments. We see the enduring hardware of their cosmos, the monumental stones, but the software, the operating system of stories and songs that gave those stones life and purpose, has often been erased. The silent majesty of Calendrical and countless sites like it is therefore a monument to two incredible achievements. First, to the builders who encoded cosmic law into landscape with such precision. And second, to the generations of knowledge keepers who sustained that understanding through memory and ritual, holding a conversation with the stars long enough for even our distant age to notice that a conversation was happening at all. The silent stones of Calendrical hold their secrets, but we are no longer limited to gazing at them with unaided eyes. A technological revolution is quietly unfolding across archaeology, giving us tools to see these ancient landscapes as their builders might have, and to ask questions we never could before. At the forefront is a technology called LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine a laser scanner mounted on an airplane or a drone, firing millions of light pulses toward the ground. These pulses penetrate dense forest canopies and bounce back, creating a detailed three-dimensional map of the Earth's surface stripped bare of vegetation. What appears as a featureless hill to a ground observer is revealed by LiDAR to be a meticulously shaped platform. What looks like a random scattering of rocks in a jungle becomes, from above, the clear outline of a ceremonial plaza or a processional road. This technology has been transformative. In places like the jungles of Guatemala, LiDAR has unveiled entire Maya cities previously unknown, showing networks of causeways and structures aligned with astonishing precision. It allows researchers to see the grand design of a site in a single, comprehensive view, revealing alignments between distant structures that would be invisible from the ground. This is how we find the hidden geometry, the grand plan that turns a collection of monuments into a single, coherent instrument. Once a site is mapped, the next step is to bring it to life in the digital realm. Using three-dimensional modeling software, researchers can reconstruct a monument as it originally stood, repairing collapsed walls and replacing eroded stones. They can then plug in astronomical data from sophisticated software programs that can calculate the exact position of the sun, moon, and stars for any date, past or future. This accounts for a subtle celestial wobble known as precession, which slowly shifts the backdrop of the stars over a 26,000-year cycle. With these digital tools, an archaeoastronomer can stand virtually at the center of a stone circle on a computer screen, turn back the cosmic clock to 3000 BCE, and watch a simulation of the summer solstice sunrise unfold. They can test a theory by seeing if, from that specific vantage point, the rising sun truly does crest a specific notch in a digital mountain range. This moves the field from suggestive observation to testable hypothesis. Drones add another critical perspective, carrying cameras and scanners to capture angles and elevations impossible for a person on the ground. They can fly along the axis of an alignment, revealing sight lines that have been obscured for centuries. A drone's eye view might show that a lone standing stone on a distant ridge is not isolated, but forms a perfect straight line with a temple doorway and a mountain peak 5 miles away, a connection no ground survey could ever establish. This technological convergence has led to startling new discoveries at some of the world's oldest sites. At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a complex of carved stone pillars dating back over 11,000 years, researchers have employed these methods to analyze its layout. Preliminary studies using computer simulations suggest that certain enclosures and pillars may be aligned with the rising points of specific stars, notably Sirius, and perhaps even with the cyclical movements of the star cluster known as the Pleiades. These findings, while still being debated, hint that the impulse to track the heavens and embed that knowledge in monumental architecture may be far older than we ever imagined, reaching back into the very dawn of settled human society. The technology allows us to ask, were these first temple builders also our first astronomers? Each digital simulation brings us a step closer to an answer. Yet this powerful new lens comes with profound ethical responsibilities. The detailed maps created by LiDAR can be a double-edged sword. In the wrong hands, they could guide looters to previously hidden and unprotected sites, leading to irreparable loss. There is also a vital question of interpretation and ownership. When a researcher in a distant university uses software to propose a new alignment at a sacred site, who validates that interpretation? The most important voices are often those of the descendant communities for whom these places remain living parts of their cultural heritage. True understanding emerges not from technology alone, but from a partnership that combines digital precision with deep cultural knowledge. The goal is not to replace traditional wisdom with computer models, but to use these tools to start new conversations, to test ideas respectfully, and to provide visual evidence that can help communities preserve and explain their own history. This technological bridge connects our age to theirs in a profound way. We are now using our most advanced science, our satellites and supercomputers, to finally appreciate the sophistication of their science, written in earth and stone. It allows us to measure the precision of their observations with a clarity that humbles our modern assumptions. In decoding the celestial code of our ancestors, we are not just uncovering lost history, we are continuing the very same human project, using new tools to answer the same eternal questions about our place under the vast and starry sky. A solstice sunrise draws thousands to Stonehenge, but every footstep on the ancient grass of Machu Picchu carries a hidden cost. Our modern fascination with these celestial clocks brings with it a profound ethical dilemma, a question of how to honor the past without loving it to death. These are not merely tourist attractions or academic playgrounds. They are sacred landscapes, still pulsing with cultural meaning for descendant communities around the world. The very act of seeking connection with ancient timekeepers can, ironically, threaten their survival. At iconic sites, the sheer volume of visitors leads to physical erosion, paths worn deep into the earth, and microclimates altered by breath and body heat. This tourism pressure forces a difficult conversation about access. Should the public be permitted to gather within the stone circle for the solstice, a practice that allows for a powerful, personal experience but also risks damage to the monument and its setting? There is no easy answer, but it demands a balance between open wonder and vigilant protection. Beyond the crush of crowds, a slower, more insidious threat looms. Climate change is altering the very environments that cradle these sites. Increased rainfall and soil instability threaten the foundations of earthen pyramids and delicate adobe walls. More frequent and intense wildfires sweep through regions holding ancient rock art and stone alignments. Rising sea levels and coastal erosion endanger sites built along shores millennia ago. These are not hypothetical futures, they are present realities, forcing archaeologists and communities to undertake emergency preservation work to shield humanity's oldest calendars from the consequences of our modern age. The challenge is monumental, requiring global cooperation and resources to install protective measures, monitor structural integrity, and sometimes make heartbreaking decisions about what can be saved. This leads to the most vital question of all: who holds the right to speak for these places? For centuries, the study of ancient sites was dominated by external researchers who often removed artifacts, interpreted symbols without context, and presented findings as revelations about lost peoples. Today, a necessary and transformative shift is underway toward collaborative stewardship. This means that research at a site like the Great Serpent Mound or in the cliffs of Mesa Verde is increasingly conducted in partnership with the Native American tribes for whom these places are ancestral homes. Their oral histories, traditional knowledge, and cultural protocols are not footnotes. They are central to understanding a site's true purpose and significance. Sustainable archaeology now prioritizes non-invasive techniques like ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR over extensive excavation, seeking to learn without disturbing. It recognizes that some knowledge is meant to remain within the community, not published for the world. This respectful approach transforms the dynamic from one of extraction to one of conversation. The core principle is this: these monumental calendars are not relics of a dead past. They are living cultural landscapes. The ceque lines of the Andes still hold meaning for Quechua communities. The horizon markers watched by Pueblo elders still guide agricultural and ceremonial life. When we visit, study, or speak about these places, we are engaging with a continuity that stretches across centuries. Our responsibility, therefore, is to act as thoughtful guests, not entitled owners. It means supporting management plans led by indigenous groups, following guidelines designed to minimize impact, and understanding that some ceremonies are private. It means listening to the stories of the living before presuming to decode the stones of the ancestors. The way we treat these sites today becomes part of their story for tomorrow. By approaching them with humility and a commitment to preservation, we do more than protect stones and earthworks. We honor the enduring human quest to find meaning in the cosmos, and we ensure that these irreplaceable teachers of time can continue their silent conversation with the sky for generations yet to come. Atomic clocks measure time to within a billionth of a second, yet we feel more out of sync than ever. The ancient landscape clocks offer a profound counterpoint to our digital immediacy, not as a call to abandon technology, but as a source of timeless wisdom. Their first lesson is one of rhythm over linear rush. Our modern world treats time as a straight line, a scarce resource to be managed, saved, and spent. The solstice markers of the past, however, understood time as a great circle, an eternal return. This cyclical perspective fosters a different kind of patience. It teaches that some patterns, like the moon's 18-year dance, cannot be hurried. It cultivates long-term thinking, the kind of vision that plants a tree whose shade you will never sit under, or builds a calendar for grandchildren you will never meet. In a culture obsessed with quarterly reports and instant gratification, this ancient patience is a radical and necessary corrective. It reminds us that the most important cycles, ecological, cultural, and personal, operate on a scale far longer than a news cycle or a fiscal year. By reconnecting with nature's rhythms, even in small ways, like noting the changing angle of sunlight in our own homes, we can reclaim a sense of temporal grounding, finding stability in the very rotations we have learned to ignore. These monuments were also masterclasses in integrated thinking. The builders did not separate disciplines into neat boxes labeled science, art, engineering, and religion. At Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone is a precision astronomical instrument, a stunning piece of sculpted art, a central feature of spiritual ritual, and a powerful political symbol, all fused into a single block of granite. This holistic approach solved complex problems by drawing on every facet of human understanding. It challenges our modern tendency toward hyper-specialization, where experts in one field rarely speak the language of another. The ancient model suggests that our greatest challenges, from climate adaptation to community well-being, may require a similar synthesis, blending technical knowledge with artistic vision, ethical consideration, and deep cultural meaning. Their innovation was not a lonely flash of genius, but a communal, interdisciplinary project built over generations. On a purely practical level, these sites are archives of sustainable design. They are the ultimate in passive solar architecture, using the free energy of the sun to mark days and seasons without a single moving part or ounce of fuel. They were built with local materials, stone from nearby quarries or earth from the surrounding plains, minimizing environmental cost and creating structures that belong to their place. The ancestral Puebloan sun-watching stations required no maintenance beyond observation, and the horizon calendars used the existing landscape, leaving it fundamentally unchanged. This philosophy of working with natural forces, rather than overcoming them with constant energy input, offers powerful principles for our own era of ecological reckoning. It points toward a design ethos that is resilient, low impact, and elegantly attuned to local conditions. Perhaps the deepest lesson is a philosophical one, concerning the very nature of time itself. In the ancient worldview, time was not a commodity to be traded, but a sacred medium of relationship, connecting the individual to the community, the living to the ancestors, and humanity to the cosmos. The moment of solstice sunrise was not just a date, it was a shared experience that reaffirmed these bonds. Our digital clocks give us unparalleled individual precision, but they often isolate us in private, standardized moments. The ancient clocks created public, meaningful ones. They invite us to ask, what are the shared horizons we look toward today? What collective rhythms still unite us? By studying these practices, we find inspiration to rebuild a sense of sacred time in our own lives, not through stone circles, but through intentional ritual, whether it is a community gathering, a mindful walk to notice the seasons change, or simply pausing to watch a sunset without glancing at a phone. These ancient timekeepers ultimately remind us that to measure time is to define what matters. They challenge us to look up from our screens out toward the horizon of our own lives and consider what cycles we are building for, what stories we are telling with our days, and what legacy of understanding we wish to leave etched, not in stone, but in the way we choose to live within the great, turning wheel of the world. From the solstice alignments of Stonehenge to the horizon calendars of Chaco Canyon, we have journeyed across continents and millennia to witness a shared human genius. These are not ruins, but the physical remains of a conversation, a dialogue between humanity and the heavens that was written into the very bones of the earth. Each stone placed, each doorway oriented, each mountain peak chosen, was an attempt to solve the fundamental mysteries of existence, to anchor fleeting human lives within the grand, predictable cycles of the cosmos. The true legacy of these landscape clocks is not merely their astonishing precision, but the profound world view they represent, one where time was not a tyrant but a teacher, and the sky was not a distant void but a living, sacred map. This was a science woven seamlessly with spirituality, a calendar that dictated both the planting of seeds and the performance of rites, binding the survival of the body to the meaning of the soul. It reveals civilizations that saw themselves not as separate from nature, but as active participants in a cosmic order they were responsible for maintaining through observation, ceremony, and monumental art. The silent stones urge us to look up and around with new eyes. In our world of digital seconds and artificial light, we have gained incredible precision but risk losing a deeper connection, the visceral understanding that we are part of a rhythm far older and more enduring than any schedule we create. These ancient timekeepers challenge us to find our own horizons, to notice the subtle shifts of season and light in our own environments, and to consider what shared cycles might still unite our communities. They stand as enduring testaments to human curiosity, resilience, and our timeless desire to find our place in the story of the universe. If this journey through ancient skies has sparked your own curiosity, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to continue exploring the profound mysteries of our shared human past.